Welcome to Comics Bazaar, the channel of comics commentary and arcana. This video features The Incredible Hulk, issue number 387, cover dated November 1991. So the cover is an interesting design here. We have panels, or the implication of panels, where Rick Jones is facing an angry mob with a dagger there gleaming, and so he's in big trouble, and that picks up from the end of the previous issue. And over here we have the continuing fight between the Hulk and Sabra. Sabra attacked the Hulk's vocal cords, so he can't speak, and so there'll be no reasoning with her, so that fight is ongoing. And dividing the two panels is the tie worn by this child, Max Mir, and Delphi of the Pantheon had a prescient vision that he would become a world leader that would be tyrannical and result in the deaths of millions of people. And so we have the cover caption, "Move over, Damien, there's a new kid in town and he's a bad omen." So the drawing here is by Dale Keown. We've got the K for his signature there, and inked not by Mark Farmer but rather by Joseph Rubinstein. So a scratchier incline from Rubinstein compared to Mark Farmer. Let's open this one up to the splash page. Splash page is pretty cool. The title of the story is Hiding Behind Mosques, with a pun on masks. And we're told in the narrative caption, the Hulk is in Jerusalem and about to kill Sabra. We'll fill in the rest as we go. So he's got her by her cloak that allows her to fly there, and he is reaching for her head. And here we have the creative team. Peter David writer as ever, Dale Keown penciler, Joe Rubinstein rather than Mark Farmer on inks, Joe Rosen on letters, and Glynis Oliver on the colours. So as I was saying in relation to the cover, Joseph Rubinstein's line, much scratchier than Mark Farmer's. Mark Farmer has a smoother, slicker incline. And, you know, it's a matter of taste in terms of whether one prefers Mark Farmer and his smoother, slicker line over Keown's pencils, or Rubinstein and his scratchier incline, which to my eye aligns that bit more with Keown's own inking style from this particular era. So let's get right into the story. The Hulk is thinking there, wait a minute, this is insane. Just because she paralyzed my vocal cords with those energy quills of hers and started pounding on me doesn't mean I have to revert to type. Got to get control of myself. But Sabra attacks him again with one of those energy quills right in the ear. And so he's thrown off balance. I really like the way that Keown conveys that here, where the point of view starts to tilt and the Hulk decides to leap away in order to avoid, or rather, he thinks to himself he's got to nail her before she pulls something else. Can't trust her too, can't trust anyone. And then because he's lost his balance with the effect on his inner ear, he slams right into one of those city walls. In another part of the city, here's Max Mir and the Israeli official's daughter Greta. I forget what her surname is, and they're running through the city, and they're running from Achilles, because Achilles of the Pantheon has gone rogue, or so it appears, and he is endeavoring to kill the boy before he grows into an adult and the future foreseen by Delphi comes to pass. So they're running, and Max says to Greta, it's not about blackmail, they want to kill me. And then he stops, and my head hurts so much, like my mind is fighting with itself, and it's so scary. And Greta says to him, it's a scary world, Max. There's always someone wanting to hurt somebody else. You have to protect yourself. You have to be ready for them. So he looks up at her and says, sure, that's it, you know. I was so confused about everything until I met you. Now, this will be very intriguing to revisit this moment, and also this little comics device here, where there's this kind of set of lines around Greta's face. And it seems to indicate surprise, but it could be something else. Again, as I say, when we get to the end of the issue, it will be interesting for you to go back to this page in the review and rethink what's going on here. But let's continue. By the way, I like this establishing shot of the archway that the two children are running through, and then we've got the crowd here in the foreground, and the use of a screen tone there by Joseph Rubinstein as well. So let's continue. Speaking of Achilles, here he is facing off against the mob that was whipped up by Max, and he's with Rick Jones because Rick Jones has just appeared on the scene as well. Rick punched out Achilles just before he could kill the boy, and the crowd is enraged. Get them, kill them. They tried to hurt the boy. So Achilles says to Rick, by the way, I like the little Dutch angle there as well, from Keown. I think that's well done. And then tilting the other way for the down shot on Rick and Achilles. That boy, Jones, Achilles says to Rick, the one you tried to protect, turned this crowd into a bloodthirsty mob with just a few words. Are you starting to see the problem? So Rick says, sorry, my vision's blocked by the bloodthirsty mob. So they run down an alleyway, but it turns out to be a blind alley. But there's a window here, and one of them is going to have to help the other up to the window. Rick is distrustful of Achilles. Like I'm supposed to trust you, he asks. And Achilles says, Jones, I'm invulnerable. I'll take on the crowd if I have to. I'm just trying to avoid a time-consuming fight. You, on the other hand, he says, all right. So Rick gives him a boost up to the window, and the idea is that Achilles will pull him up. But where's he gone? Achilles, buddy, asks Rick. You're still not mad because I decked you before, right? Bloodthirsty crowd, remember, about 5 yards away. So Rick starts to despair, but Achilles grabs him by the wrist and pulls him through the window into the building and the safety of the building just as the mob arrives. And that's pretty much our inspiration for the cover panel there, with Rick facing the angry mob. And let's continue. We get back to the Hulk, and again you can see the difference between Mark Farmer's inking style, which is much smoother, and Rubinstein's, which is scratchier and more akin to Keown's own inking style in this particular era. So the Hulk is thinking, I'm so very tired of this, of being judged not by who I am, but by what people think I am. She was only too quick to assume I was trying to hurt the boy Max Mir, when in fact I was trying to save him from Achilles. So this is interesting. I mean, like, this is one of the themes of the Hulk. He looks like a monster, he's treated like a monster, so then he acts like a monster. But also, of course, the story is set in Jerusalem, infamously a city over which different groups and tribes and religions have fought down the centuries, down the millennia. And it's a place where there is a lot of judgment and prejudice between and among those different groups. And so, you know, like, there's an appropriateness to the thoughts of the Hulk as he chases Sabra. And he continues to think, she freezes my larynx, makes it impossible for me to communicate. But she didn't care what I had to say anyway, did she? No, none of them ever does. They look at me with judgment in their eyes. And so again, the theme of prejudice. And then he concludes, God, I'm sick of it. I'm sick of all of them. So this is something that Peter David, is playing with the new version of the Hulk, that he is prone, or there's the possibility of him leaning in to the option of becoming, you know, Nietzsche's Übermensch, that he would basically leave all human association and basically live the life of a god, based on his strength and power and confidence. Anyway, he continues here as he grabs for Sabra's cloak that allows her to fly. When does she stop? When does the judging stop? He was about to think. When he misses her, she's quick. In addition to being strong, I'll give her that. Of course, the fact that the world's still spinning around me helps her. So that's from the quill that went hit him in the ear and has disrupted his inner ear and balance. So here his leap goes awry and he falls straight down through the dome of the Israel Museum, making a big hole in the top of it. And Sabra is aghast. I've got to get him out of the shrine of the book before he destroys everything. A beast like that has no concern for sacred relics. So let's turn the page. The Hulk lands on the ground. He's covered with rubble from the dome, and Sabra attacks. That's a pretty cool anchor image there of her kicking him in the jaw. And she tells him to get out of there now, attacks him again with those energy quills. And she is disgusted to think I celebrated the day you got amnesty, to think that I actually told the world you taught me about humanity. And what happened barely a month later, my superiors called me into their office and showed me news footage that my bosses rubbed my nose in, news footage of you, Hulk, you on a rampage, the man I thanked, now mindless, destructive monster again. When I spoke out for you, I spoke on behalf of Israel. You humiliated my country, you humiliated me. And then she tells him, eat this pig, as she gives him an uppercut to the underside of his jaw. You can see the Hulk is enraged there. I really like the hatching and cross-hatching there as the muscles of Hulk's face pull back from his teeth, his gritted teeth. I think that's really well done, and also the popped eye there. It's a very expressive face of rage from Dale Keown and the pencils, as well as always the work on the back muscles and shoulder muscles there. Very well done. That's a hell of a punch, and it sends Sabra all the way through the dome again and out into the city. So a really good fight sequence there, and of course playing around with the themes of the Hulk, his monstrous appearance, as I was saying earlier, and she of the belief now that he is doesn't just appear as a monster but is one, and that's his true character. So she falls into this statue, and the Hulk grabs the statue and basically knocks her with it. And he's thinking to himself, not this time. Those quills barely slow me down if they just hit my body. But if I hit her body, I'll slow her down quite a bit more. Interesting choice here. I always like to point it out where Dale Keown has varied the layout by having a borderless panel. What is this problem I have in getting along with women these days, he thinks to himself. And that's the cue for a transition back to the US. And how's his wife, Betty Banner, getting on? Well, she's got this new job where she's working at this help hotline, and her boss there tells her, you better take the day off. So Betty asks, now, why in the world should I? And because when she enters the lobby of the hotline building, there are all these TV and news reporters there, and they're asking her a whole bunch of questions. Where's your husband? Why are you working here? Is it true you're having Rick Jones's child? Is it true you're having an affair with an alien? I understand you're moonlighting as a topless. And then she interrupts, leave me alone. I don't know what my husband's up to. He has a life. I have a life. So why don't you leeches get your lives? Get lives of your own instead of attaching yourselves to the lives of others. Now get out. So here's the paparazzo from the previous issue, and there he is. He's the one who called the press pack. Should have given me the exclusive, Mrs. Banner. Could have avoided all of this. So she tells him to drop dead. And then Betty's boss, once the journos and paparazzi have gone, says, so tell me, entre nous, between us, what's it like being married to the Hulk? And Betty, her eyebrow raises there, and she says, I could tell you stories. And then we're back in Jerusalem. So not a transition there, really. Back to Jerusalem. That's kind of interesting. But in any case, because we had the transition from Jerusalem to Betty, with the Hulk thinking about how he can't get on with women, and he's having a bit of a dysfunctional time in the relationship with his wife because of his newly integrated personalities, and the fact that she's afraid of him. But back in Jerusalem, Rick and Achilles seem to have lost the crowd, and then Rick says to him, not another step, man, until you come clean. Why'd you try to kill the kid? Why'd you go renegade like that Agamemnon guy said? So Achilles explains about the vision of the kid in the future, and he says here, more interestingly, Delphi saw visions of him leading armies, destroying everything, and I swore to them I would never let it happen, never again. So Rick is attuned to the pronoun there, swore to who, and then Achilles corrects his grammar, whom, them, right over there. And so he distracts Rick and punches him in the jaw, knocks him out cold. Sorry, kid, I know you're just trying to do the right thing, but so am I. So he's running once again in search of Max Mir in order to end him. And elsewhere, Sabra and the Hulk are still at loggerheads. And this is another pretty cool anchor image of the Hulk leaping around Jerusalem. And Sabra says, I'm as strong as ever. You all have so little regard for us. I'm small and you're huge, but so is Israel small, and we stand up against our enemies. Attack us and we endure. Drop scuds on us, we endure, and we give as good as we get. So that's interesting from the vantage point of 2025, given the events of the past couple of years. And earlier in 2025, the missile attacks from Iran on Israel. But an interesting thought here from the Hulk in relation to the speechifying Sabra's been doing. Terrific. I'm not fighting a woman. I'm fighting the Zionist recruiting board. So, Peter David always bringing sometimes a light touch to serious subjects, and one that is personal to him, given, of course, his Jewish religion. So here we go. Back into the story. Sabra there questions herself, what was I thinking? If he takes a swing, because she's at the Wailing Wall, she realizes, what was I thinking? If he takes a swing at me and misses, I've got to lure him away from here. But he grabs her cloak, which is what allows her to fly. So she's grounded now, and he's getting his voice back. But not yet, not 100% yet. So again, this is interesting fighting choreography, where she knees him in the chest and gives him an uppercut to the side of his face there, again on the ear, the one that was affected by the energy quill. Stop it, stop standing there and growling at me with that insufferable smirk, she says. Let's continue with the story, get past the advertisements. So she pops him in the jaw, again in the cheek, and he knocks her right into the wall. You can see the cracks in the wall too, but he's getting his voice back. I've had it with you, he says. That's another great close-up, three-quarter profile close-up on the Hulk's enraged face. Sabra's bleeding there from the violence of that punch. And then we have a establishing shot of the Dome of the Rock up ahead. So that's where they're running towards, and Achilles catches up with the girl and the boy. So Max rounds on him. You stop, he says. Now go somewhere and blow your brains out. And Achilles resists the mind control. He says, I'm invulnerable to everything, even mind control. So they run into the Dome of the Rock, which isn't it a mosque? And so there they are on the inside. And Achilles yells after them, you're only dragging this out because I'll never stop until I stop you. And then back at the Wailing Wall, Sabra gives another big speech. All right, monster, you've got me. Finish the job, but don't expect me to beg. The whole world thinks Israel is weak now. We waited for America to defend us from Saddam, and our pride was far more devastated than our cities. So that's a reference to, I think, the first Gulf War, 1990 to 1991, which ended in February of 91. She continues, violence against women here, it's becoming commonplace. Frustrated soldiers are beating their wives because they had to stay their hand against Iraq. Our anger eats away even at ourselves. That's really interesting. I don't remember that, any stories about that kind of thing from the time, but maybe some of you do. And she continues, so you take a message back to your American friends, monster. You tell them I died with honor, that Israelis fear no enemy, that our people will never again submit. And the Hulk's got his voice back and he says, all right, you win. To the murderous tyranny, she continues, and he says, I said you win. I surrender. I give up. I admit defeat. Hitting you further would be pointless. It's needless brutality. And besides, it probably wouldn't shut you up. Now, would you please scrub your platitudes and listen for a minute? But meanwhile, so Sabra hasn't experienced this side of the Hulk before. This is a big shock to her. But meanwhile, Rick is running from the mob once again. They remember him and they're after him. That's a pretty cool sequence by Dale Keown there. Good storytelling. And Achilles is still on the tail of the two kids. And he says to Max, "You shouldn't be up here, boy. It's a long drop and you're just endangering the girl." So Max says, "You better leave us alone, mister. My dad's important. He'll give you more trouble than you can," he was about to say, "handle." And then he trips on a crack between the paving slabs or the concrete blocks, and he falls off the side of the dome. And the Hulk is there just in time. And he has time to think too. Well, this is certainly a turning point, he thinks. If the Pantheon is correct and this kid has a future of despotism ahead of him, then I'm helping to ensure it if I save him. So all I have to do is let gravity take its course. But the Hulk's a hero despite his monstrous appearance. Oh, who am I kidding? I've got you, boy. So he grabs the boy before he hits the ground and leaps away. And he tells him, "Now stay put, I'll attend to Achilles." But the boy has different ideas. So again, a great sequence there. Really like the spotting of blacks on the Hulk. It's turned to nighttime now because night falls very quickly in Jerusalem. Like at that latitude, you go from day to night super quick. It's very different in Ireland, where there's a long sunset twilight before it goes completely dark. Any case, back into the story, the Hulk lands up at the dome. "Nowhere to run, baby," he says to Achilles. And Sabra's there too, backing up the Hulk. So he's obviously explained everything to her, and she concurs that no child should be murdered, despite everything she was saying about Israel and its place in the world and its many enemies. And of course, it's the history of the Jews and all of that, which lies behind it. And Achilles there says to her, "I see. You've gone from being enemies to being Martha Reeves and the Vandellas." So I looked that up. So that's like a Motown band from the late 50s, 60s. And they had their ins and outs and splits and getting back together again. So I think that that's the point of the reference. I didn't understand it at first blush, and maybe some of you wouldn't understand it either. And she says to Achilles, "We've reached an understanding, which is more than I can say of you, Achilles. I don't understand you at all." I really like here in the background Glynis Oliver's work on the stars. So she's indicating stars in there with a little bit of magenta. Achilles sees Max running down one of the alleys and Rick coming from the other direction with the big mob behind him. And he sees what's in Prospect Jones being pursued by the stampeding mob. If the boy, Mir, he doesn't see coming from around the other corner. So he understands that there's a possibility that the boy's going to get trampled by the mob that he called into being with his mental powers. Or so it seems. Wait until the last page. Achilles says to Sabra, "You want to understand? All right, Sabra. I assume you've heard of Dachau." And the Hulk is intrigued by the fact he's speaking so quickly, almost desperately. He knows something's up here. The German concentration camp, says Sabra. And here we learn for the first time an interesting and unexpected history of Achilles. I was there. I was born in Germany in 1909, a Jew. So that's intriguing because, of course, Achilles' appearance is more Aryan. So the fact that he's a Jew is a big surprise. It's a big twist. He continues and he says, "I know nothing of my true parentage or powers, for my real father wanted me to live in the real world. All I knew was that I never had a sick day in my life." And that's a reference to, Agamemnon is supposed to be the progenitor of all of the superpowered members of the Pantheon. But he was born a Jew in Germany in 1909, so he's long lived as well. That's an aspect of his power. And here we get a collage montage of all of these moments, which of course refer to the horror of the concentration camps, the death camps. And Achilles continues, I married and we had 3 children, 2 girls and a boy. And then came Hitler and the madness. My wife, my children hauled away. Helmut, my wife screamed. My name. My children wailing, Father, Father. And I was helpless, helpless. We were slabs of meat to them, nothing more. I was a curiosity for a short time. They tried to tattoo a number on me, and the needles broke. But only a momentary curiosity. We were brought to Dachau and herded into delousing showers, except they were gas chambers, of course. They cleaned out the bodies, dumped them into mass graves, and left us there to rot. And there, crushed beneath dead flesh, I learned why I never got sick and why tattoo needles broke. The man who can't be hurt or killed, reborn from death all around him. But remember, Achilles has a weakness to the Hulk. The Hulk, for some reason, is his Achilles heel. But anyway, he continues and says, I wouldn't expect Dr. Banner to understand, Sabra, but you know, never again. So she responds, never again. And of course, that is the maxim or motto in respect of the Holocaust, and something that lies behind, of course, the creation of the world's only Jewish state, the state of Israel. Never again, she says. The boy, Mir, will become a dictator on par with Hitler. He controls minds, says Achilles. He will rule unless I stop him. So let's continue. This is something that I note sometimes with Dale Keown. He gets the plot from Peter David, and when he's coming to the end, if he's given over space to big anchor images, sometimes you'll get a page towards the end with a fair few panels on it in order to wrap up the plot. So here we are, while Achilles has been talking all the time, Max has ended up on the pathway that Rick is running from the mob, and he's trampled by the mob. They run right over him. The Hulk twigs to it. Again, great uplighting here, spotting of blacks as he leaps off the side of the dome. Achilles, you slime, he exclaims. You distracted us and let the boy. And Achilles fills in, suffer at his own hands. What more poetic justice than that? So the mob here comes back to their senses, and Rick arrives. He sees the boy trampled on the ground, and the Pantheon's jet arrives to collect them. It's all over. Then back at the Mount, and the Hulk says, I should have left him to the mercy of the Israeli police, Agamemnon, even when your ship did show up. And Agamemnon responds, your discretion is appreciated, Dr. Banner. Besides, normal authorities would never have been able to hold Achilles, but he will be dealt with by me severely. So is that going to be the case or not? Again, interesting use of a screen tone here from Joseph Rubinstein. And the boy, Max Mir, asks the Hulk. Oh, he's fine, says Agamemnon. The Jerusalem hospital is the best, and he's already flirting with the nurses. Now, why not show Mr. Jones around our facility? And Rick says, and I'll make sure to visit the gift shop before I leave because we've got to have a joke. But when the Hulk and Rick have left, we have this private conversation between Achilles and Agamemnon. And Achilles says, all right, father, spill. Why did you lie to him about the boy's condition and about my instructions? So here there's a revelation coming. Agamemnon says, you mean, why didn't I tell Dr. Banner that I'd instructed you to kill the boy if possible? Because in the previous issue, Agamemnon sent the Hulk to Jerusalem to save the boy, telling him that his plan was to take the boy to the Mount and ensure that he had an upbringing that would thwart the future foreseen by Delphi. And why did he do these two things? Because I was curious about your moral center, Achilles, and about Dr. Banner's. I found both of your reactions interesting. So Achilles is not happy. We're all just rats in a maze to you, aren't we, father? And Agamemnon responds. An interesting layout here. We don't see his eyes, just his face. Just the bottom half of his face. And that kind of enigmatic smile playing on his lips. Good night, Achilles. Dream of your lost loved ones and be content. I mean, that's a really weird encounter between these two. And it puts us readers on our guard regarding Agamemnon and what his true motives and goals are, as well as his moral center. And then back in Jerusalem, what about the boy? So Agamemnon lied about the boy. He's not up and about flirting with the nurses. And so Greta's there by his bedside, and she says, "Nobody understands anything, Max. Your parents, they said you'll be just a vegetable. And that man at the dome, he said you controlled minds. I heard him, that you would rule. They're all idiots. You will recover. I'll see to that. And as for what the man said, well, the thing about ruling and controlling minds is not letting people know who's really in charge. They always say that behind every great man is a woman. Well, you can be a great man. I knew the moment I met you that I could control your mind and siphon my power through you. No one will ever suspect, and we'll do great things, you and I, great things." So there's her eyes flashing. She's the one with the mind powers, and it sends us all the way back to, where is it now? This particular scene here, that she controlled his mind even as his mind was clearing. Intriguing, isn't it? It's a very intriguing ending. And also this point that she makes, the thing about ruling and controlling minds is not letting people know who's really in charge. So that's a line that, you know, is kind of grist to the mill of conspiracy theorists, isn't it? And intriguing in the context of a story set in Israel and in the city of Jerusalem. Peter David playing around with a lot of implications and subtext in this two-parter. And very good stuff indeed. Next issue, the return of Jim Wilson, one of the Hulk's erstwhile sidekicks, and the high-speed homicide of Speed Freak. So there we go, one page of letters there, nothing terribly interesting in the letters page. And that is it, 22 pages of story and art. Let me know your thoughts on this one in the comments section. If you enjoyed my review and commentary, please like and share the video. It really does help the channel. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more content like this.